I got one guy awaiting a murder case right now, and I know that when I ultimately put him on the stand at his trial, he's probably going to say something really stupid.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're talking about dash cams. Should you get one? Does it help? When does it hurt? And what is the number one mistake probably people make with dash cams in our experience? And we're going to be answering a pretty interesting question that came from a viewer about whether you have a duty to preserve these, kind of this footage. Some of these things get automatically overwritten. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And we fired up a newsletter. We'll have that linked in the description below. YouTube censorship is on the march. We're in an election season. If we're making plans in case things go dark, we want to be able to get a hold of you. So check out, give us your email, and we will stay in touch. Promise we're not going to bug you, but it's very, very important. But today we're talking about dash cams, and in the big scheme of things, they really come up in road rage cases. And where do road rage cases rank as far as self-defense cases go?
Ooh, so I would say, and we are probably, I think, the best repository for this information because basically all we do is self-defense cases and firearms cases, and probably 80% of our criminal docket is people who were arrested for displaying a firearm stemming out of a road rage incident. It is, if you're gonna get arrested for displaying your gun, it's gonna be because you were in a road rage situation. Now, does that mean that you are the bad guy all the time? No, that's the problem with road rage is it's two humans. No one who's watching what's going on around is sticking around to talk to the cops and let them know who the good guy was and who the bad guy was. So it's two humans. It is he said, she said. It is virtually no actual concrete evidence. It is just, I say this happened, I say this happened. When you get really scared because of what that person is doing to you and you display a firearm, you're like just trying to make the situation go away. They are already on the phone to 911 saying, a crazy person pointed a gun at me. I didn't do anything wrong. They were just road raging me. And then when that story dings up, that's the bias, right? That is the bias that begins your case. And unfortunately, where that bias often ends is the guy with the gun gets arrested, even if he wasn't the impetus of the situation. He wasn't the bad guy. He's just trying to save his own neck.
Yeah, and even in cases where there was factually no display of a firearm. I mean, I have clients, and, we can kind of put this aside for a second, where I believe they never even touched their gun, but the police walk on scene, they talk to a hysterical Chevy Impala driver, then they walk over to lifted truck with Second Amendment stickers on the back, and then they find a gun in the car, and bing, bang, boom, they got a road rage case.
That's your corroborating evidence. I mean, yes, you could accuse me. You could just get mad about my driving behavior, which now that I'm in my big mom car is much better. I do much better driving behavior.
She's doing much more raging.
I'm doing much less raging. Well, not raging, just like swiftness. Swiftness. People would get mad at my swiftness,
sure,
perhaps before. But you could call the police on me and be like, black handgun. And you know what? Ding, ding, ding.
Half the time they're gonna be right.
Well, in my car, 100% of the time they're going to be right. But yes, absolutely. So it is very easy to lie on someone, particularly in a very Second Amendment friendly area, and say, gun in the car. And you know what? Yeah, there's always a gun in my car. There's always a gun in your car.
Yeah.
You're going to be right.
I'm not going to tell you the color, though.
That's where you get your 50-50 shot. Like, it's not camo pink, I'll tell you that.
Well, and then we look at, dash cams. Do they help? Do they hurt? I will say,
big debate.
Yeah, right out of the gate, dash cams sometimes capture reasonable people acting reasonably. Sometimes they capture unreasonable people acting unreasonably.
Yes. So, I mean, that's like, we see the ones, and I think we've got a clip to show you here, but we see the ones all the time where it's like, you're just the innocent driver and all of a sudden something crazy is happening around you. And you think, thank goodness that person had a dash cam, right?
Yeah, let's check out that clip.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
It's kind of tough to argue that you were in fear for your life when you begin chasing the person.
Oh gosh, yes. And that's the problem with dash cams is that there are so many people who do things that don't look good. Like that guy, should have he had a gun pointed at him? No,
No.
absolutely not.
And that channel, Dashcam Lessons, I mean, there's a lot of lessons to be had on there.
Oh yeah, go watch. But like, no, yeah, no, that was, you should not have pointed a gun at that guy. However, like, it's real, like, let's say that chase ends and the guy who was the initial victim of the pointing has to use his firearm. It is really hard to then argue, I was so scared of my life when he pointed the gun at me that I chased him down. Like,
But I imagine the guy who chased him down would be the 911 caller in that situation.
you would hope so. But he's not calling 911 at the time.
No, not from what we can tell.
So, I mean, so is a dash cam a good idea? Sometimes, because the problem with these cases is there is no evidence. It is verbal statements alone. And that, I mean, not everyone who's telling the truth sounds good on a witness stand. And that's the unfortunate part of it. I mean, I have clients who I 100% believe their story. I know that they're truthful. I got one guy awaiting a murder case right now, and I know that when I ultimately put him on the stand at his trial, he's probably going to say something really stupid. But he has to take the stand because it's a self-defense case.
Right.
You know?
Well, and a lot of times, and I think this case is a good example of it, is you think about the perspective of the dash camera, especially this one. It's forward facing. Well, guess what? It doesn't see what the driver sees. You know, he has his head turned to the right. Maybe he sees something different than the camera sees.
Yes.
And so being able to explain that to a jury, hey, this is what you see on the camera. This is what you don't see on the camera. Sometimes that, I will say, juries don't really like that stuff, especially, I mean, another context that it comes up in is police officers wearing bodily worn cameras. Police officer enters a room, body forward facing, capturing things over here. Maybe the police officer's attention is drawn somewhere else, and so you don't see what the police officer sees, and so you don't, whenever you're saying, hey, why did the guy act this way, you don't get to see what information they're acting on, and so it also creates sometimes a little bit of confusion.
Yes, so that is, I mean, the incredible downside to creating evidence. Even when you say, oh my gosh, if there was evidence in this case instead of just statements, that would be really great for me. But you can create evidence that's very bad for you. If it shows that you are not like the clean hands victim, you're chasing the guy down or you're doing something crappy, or if it just shows maybe not what you say in your statement, not because you're lying, but because the video just doesn't show that. It couldn't have captured that. It only captures relatively normal behavior. But then you're like, no, you didn't see the crazy stuff. Well, it looks like a piece of evidence against you because it didn't capture the crazy stuff.
And then on the flip side, I had a client who, tow truck driver, was at an apartment complex, picking up a tow on his way out. This is from his perspective. He's driving out of the apartment complex. He hears some pops going off, and he calls 911, drives someplace nearby, meets the police. The security guards tell the cops, hey, we thought this car was being stolen, and he pulled a gun on us, so we shot at him. And when we review the camera inside of his cab, he's driving. He doesn't even put his hands on a gun. I mean, in that case, it saved his bacon.
It saved his bacon. I mean, and that's the debate, right? Is these cameras can go either way. And I think people have a bias towards putting them up because the bias is, I am a reasonable person. Yeah. I do not do anything wrong. This will never catch me doing anything wrong. Ultimately, it might, but also, even if it doesn't, it still might not help you. It still might serve as a piece of evidence against you.
Yeah, and I think that brings us to probably the biggest mistake we see people make when it comes to dash cameras and body-worn cameras, and what is that?
Disclosing them to law enforcement right off the bat. I mean, it is so easy. It is so easy to not disclose, because even if the cops see that you have a dash cam, it is so easy for you to be like, I don't really know how to get that footage off, but I'll get it and I'll send it to you. I'll supplement.
Or I think there's
then you send it to your lawyer, right? You don't do that.
Well, I think people are also very inclined, especially this just is where it comes up, 911 calls or those initial discussions with police officers, where there's not an opportunity to review the footage on scene. It lends credibility to the witness to say the whole here's my story and it's all captured on video.
I got it all on dash cam.
And so that, I think they think in the moment, hey, look, this is going to elevate my credibility in light of the evidence, and therefore, maybe they'll take me at my word. But I mean, the natural follow-up question is, give us the tape.
Right. So do not mention it And do not, if the police see it themselves, stall. Let your attorney review it. We have talked about it on the channel before. I cannot tell you how many times I have had people be like, look at this camera footage. It's really good for me. And I look at it and I'm like, hell no.
You are committing so many crimes unjustifiably.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I had one, and we got the case no billed, actually, by the grace of God, because the camera footage from inside the house where the alleged assault occurred, he's like, it was a lover's quarrel between two men, and ends up shooting his husband, and he's like, but I mean, he was coming at me and he was this and that and he was fighting with me all day, and sure enough, like, the camera footage from inside the house is like, you are the aggressor, dude. Like, yeah. I mean, you guys are fighting, but like, you are getting the best of him a whole bunch before that shooting happened. So it's like, no, that is not particularly good for you, sir. But he was hell-bent that it was good for him, right? So,
yeah. And then another interesting question that came up in the questions, we read your comments. So if you have questions, when we have these discussions, make sure to leave that down below about, let's say your surveillance system or your dash system automatically overwrites videos after a certain period of time. Would it be considered tampering with evidence if you do not actively preserve the video?
No. Is close under some state statutes.
Yeah, talk to an attorney licensed in your state.
If I'm the government, it is novel, I think, if I say your inaction was actually concealment, right? Which would qualify perhaps in Texas. But no prosecutor wants to bring I mean, unless your last name is Trump, no prosecutor's bringing like novel felony theories against you for something like that.
Yeah,
right?
The equivalent that I would chalk it up to, let's say somebody murders another person, buries gun before police begin investigating, is not revealing the location of the gun. Is that tampering? That's the kind of analogy that I would draw.
Yeah, right. And no, it's not. It's
right.
not tampering. So yeah, I mean, I think it would be a bad tampering case that would not get them anywhere. Could they try to make the charge? Sure.
But your state's law may vary. It's very important. Each case is very fact specific. For example, the Texas tampering statute, you have to know that an investigation is proceeding or in progress. There's lots of different kind of variables out there that change the calculus, because I can imagine a scenario where, you get a preservation letter or,
oh, sure.
Other things happen. And so your legal circumstances are going to depend. So it's really important to consult with an attorney. All right. Ultimate question, Emily Taylor, attorney at law. Should you get a dash cam?
No, that's my reasonable minds may differ. Richard may differ.
Yeah, I think you should get a dash cam.
No, I disagree. I will never put one in my car. I think that if it is as likely to hurt you as it is to help you, my calculus says no.
I say, if you're a reasonable person who behaves reasonably on the roadway, go get yourself a dash cam. If you're an unreasonable person, then don't get a dash cam.
Am I an unreasonable person?
What does that tell us about Emily? But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And please question and comment below. I think this is a legal toss-up. Let us know. Would you get a dash cam or not? Do you have a dash cam or not? Until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.